It's not even controversial anymore.
People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
Miranda, hello.
Hello.
We've been using a picture of you with an alligator in our closing credits, and I need to somehow incorporate it into our Florida show open.
Yeah, you do. Maybe you can, instead of just the alligator meowing, it could be me and the gator meowing.
Okay, we'll work on that. All right, so let's get into it. A couple Florida stories that reflect some issues that we've been talking about here in Washington State. You know, the state of our school system is pretty bad. Democrats in the Washington Education Association, they're very opposed to school choice, but in Florida, school choice seems to be helping kids thrive.
Yeah, and it's not just helping kids thrive. The program itself is thriving. People are really taking advantage of this. It basically, we talked about it last year, I think, when he put these scholarships in place where basically each kid is worth a certain amount of money in the school system. That's how much money it takes to educate this kid, and the money follows the kid. So if you apply for these grants or these scholarships and get approved for them, you can take that money and apply it to charter school or private school or even home and neighborhood schooling. And people are really taking advantage of this. I even have a couple of friends who are able to keep their kids in private school because of this extra funding that they're getting for not having their kids in a public school. But on the other side of it, it is scaring some public school districts into thinking they're going to have to close some of their campuses. But at the end of the day, if parents choose to take their kids to a better education, that's on the public school for not, stepping up to what these parents and kids are expecting of their education.
Exactly. It's wild to me. If the idea behind education is making sure that kids get what they need to thrive, and you're like, no, we have to have them in public schools, and we're going to force them to be in public schools by making it too expensive to do anything else. It's like, okay, so you're not, if you were offering a good education to kids, then you wouldn't have issues with declining enrollment. You wouldn't have to close public schools. Seattle's has to close around 20 elementary schools because enrollment has gone down. And I imagine it would be so much more if parents could get financial assistance to put their kids in a private school or in a charter school or even homeschool them. So it's just funny. It's like forcing someone, they want a monopoly on education because if there wasn't a monopoly, people wouldn't choose them.
It's true. And I also think that this could eventually even out to be beneficial in both ways. Because you and I went to a public school, but we went to a public school in a small town. So we were able to have small classrooms, more personalized education because our teachers knew us. So maybe they just need smaller campuses so that the kids that do want to go to public school can still operate in a public school that's small enough to be ran by the money that's still being sent there. But now you're having less kids in the classroom. And to me, that just creates a higher standard for education when it comes around full circle. So
yeah. Oh, God forbid they get what they want. The small classrooms that all teachers want and deserve, frankly. But it's like, okay, we are going to have small classrooms because kids don't want to be here. So you really better show us that education standards are high. Okay. Another thing that I think is tied to, the opposite of what's happening in Washington State. We had in Oregon and Washington this month, the fastest girls in track were boys at the state meets. Boys won the state championship titles in both Washington and Oregon in their respective races. And so in Florida, they're making this switch and this distinction when it comes to sports between sex and gender. Can you explain?
Yeah, so they're basically replacing the mentions of the word gender with the word sex, just so that it doesn't have that gray area of being with the identifying as or with your sexual orientation. And I think that they're doing this. I think they're doing this to protect girls and boys just being able to have privacy in their locker rooms, being able to have opportunities in athletics to succeed and win and go to school and get scholarships for that. It's such a touchy thing because I just don't know what they're going to do with this. But for now, Florida is going to go ahead and stand their ground. And I don't know. I know that there's a federal policy about discrimination, and they're trying to include gender in that as a discrimination. But then they're making that no distinction on if that's with identity. And some Florida people are a little bit worried that that could mean that Florida's not going to get some funding from the federal government if they decide to not abide by this law. So, but I don't think Florida cares. I think Florida's going to stand their ground regardless when it comes to this.
Well, it's an interesting fix, but it's very simple, but it's actually pretty profound because, as you know, people claim gender's fluid. Gender's whatever I feel I am. They're like, okay, well, then we'll say your sex, your biological sex, and not your gender, and then you can't try to finagle your way into competing against a female athlete. Florida, man, we got to do something here. And I don't think they're going to do what Florida does, but it's interesting to see some of the solutions to what's going on with the gender ideology. All right, one more. A 104-year-old woman saved from a gator.
Yes,
Did you
everybody
save her?
in Florida. Huh?
Did you save her? I've seen you wrestle an alligator.
I did.
So.
That's what this head's from. No, I'm just kidding. No, I didn't save her, but our boys in blue came to the rescue and arrested this gator.
Oh, hey, buddy. We can't cuff him, but you are under arrest. You got to leave their grandmas alone. We're going to take you downtown. Let's go.
This is a little old lady, and she was scared to leave her house, so she had to call the police to have them come in and help her get rid of this nuisance gator that was just hanging around her yard.
Oh, that's so sweet. It's so funny. In Seattle, first of all, if you called the cops for wildlife, they'd be like, go away. We don't have the time for that. But I just want to know, like, when I've been to some SPD training as part of stories and stuff, and I want to know if Florida law enforcement has to go through, like, how to wrangle a gator training, or if that's an on-the-job experience, because I bet that they don't encounter that irregularly.
No, and honestly, I like to believe that there has to be some sort of like protocol in place for dealing with alligators and snakes here, because it is something that I like every day when I'm researching for the show, there is always a gator story, and I try not to press them on every week because I'm like, there's so many gator encounters here, but some of them are just a little bit better than others, and this one's pretty good.
I'd rather encounter a gator than a crackhead. I mean, that's what police are wrangling here, the drug addicts. So at least the police are showing up and it's an alligator who means well, just minding his own business. All right, Miranda, we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye.
It's not even controversial anymore.
People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.